Hello and welcome back to another episode of They Don't Teach Us in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of Law Firm Alchemy and Red Kraken Creative. And my guest today, I'd say he needs no introduction, but unfortunately it's been probably too long since he was last on the show. But perhaps you've seen him on LinkedIn. You've seen his own podcast, The Driven Crowd, which if you're not subscribed to, you absolutely should subscribe to that podcast. He's got a lot of awesome guests over there, both from his own location where he is. So some business owners you won't normally see if you're a law firm owner, and a lot of people who maybe you will recognize in the law firm owner space. Guest today is my friend, member of Genesis Mastermind, Mr. Scott Snellings. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, my man. It's always good to be on with you, Charlie. And don't forget to check out Charlie's episodes on The Driven Crowd. Those are super good too.
That's right. We had a fun one with Len that we did a couple of months ago at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. You guys were in Dallas for the mastermind group. And I said, hey, if you guys are both going to be here, this is too good of an opportunity to pass up. So we did an in-studio podcast. It was awesome.
Yeah, we got to see the fancy space that you get to record in. It's the only time I've ever been jealous of someone else's tech.
Yeah, well, that's because it's not mine. I pay to use that space. So
That's
yeah,
right.
it better be nice.
All right, Scott, answer the question. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
So I kind of reflected on this one a little bit because I wanted to do something kind of unique. And, I think this time around, I will say law school does not teach you how to live in the present. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, law school is always teaching you strategy, how to plan ahead, think ahead, anticipation, all those kinds of things. And it's super easy to kind of shift your whole mindset that way. And it's funny because what you'll see, especially with younger lawyers, is they don't listen very well.
Oh.
Right? They're constantly anticipating what's going to happen next. What kind of argument are you going to bring, this, that, or that? And they miss little nuances. You see it all the time in depositions. You see it in hearings. You see it in those kinds of things. And I think it's really experience when you realize, okay, slow down and listen to what's going on. And I think that could really be focused on more in law school. And two, the other thing is, if you're never present while you're practicing, you're probably not very present outside of the practice. Right? I know for me, for instance, I always deal with this. It's super easy to get in the same mindset or to keep that mindset in your home life and your friendships and whatever other endeavors you're going. And it's hard to just be still and enjoy being in the present, right? We can't do anything about the past. We can anticipate the future, plan for it. And then we all know what happens right there, right? Everything goes sideways. So man, live in the present. Figure out how to live in the present, and it was going to open up so much more joy for you.
It's interesting you mentioned friendships in there, Scott, because that would be the place where I think it's usually easiest for people to be more present when they are with their friends. Like you're in a social situation, and home and work are those two spaces that when you're in one, your mind wanders to the other. And it's weird how you have that overlapping experience. So like for yourself, was this for you, was this like a conscious call out where you all of a sudden realized one day, oh my gosh, I am just living somehow a misaligned life. Like I'm literally always thinking about the place that I'm not at. Or was this someone like knocking on the door going, Scott, you're not here. You're not here. Please be here.
There may have been one or two discussions with the wife, like over dinner as I'm zoned out and not listening to the kid's story or something like that. For sure. And, I think to some extent that's normal, but when it becomes habitual, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have a really, really hard time, quote unquote, turning it off. And I may even be totally tuned into my wife and she'll say something and it gives me an idea for work, right? She'll make an analogy and I'm like, oh, hey, I really like that. That applies to X, Y, Z. And then all of a sudden I'm gone, right? I'm tuned out. And she understands. But at the same time, that's not fair to them, right? That's not fair to my kids if I'm zoned out while they're telling, their story and they're younger. So their stories are not quite succinct. And so it's super easy to zone out whenever you're not thinking about work, but whenever you are thinking about work, that's really not fair, right? It's not being present for them. And, especially when it comes to relationships, we're all relational beings. I don't care if you're an extrovert, an introvert, man, having the time for someone and being present within that time, that's how you build and cultivate just any kind of relationship. And then especially with the ones closest to you, you owe that to them. And it's just such a more joyful existence when you're present in developing those relationships.
So I think one of the biggest problems is people are so worried. Oh, this is actually really interesting. I had a discussion with Veronica, my oldest kiddo, the other day, because she's pretty consistently fearful. Like, she's the one who's just afraid of stuff.
Right.
And we started talking about like the reality of what you tend to face. Like, okay, let's actually walk through this situation. You've been through these 3 other situations like it before. Why are you spending all this time worrying about this right now when you kind of know how that is going to play out? And all you're doing right now is doing yourself this catastrophic disservice.
Right.
There's the acronym for fear: false expectations appearing real. And I don't know about you, Scott, and I'd be curious. Like, I'm a major contingency planner. I almost can't help myself. I'm always like, well, if Y happens, I'm going to do plan D, but if M happens, I'm going to move to Z with a combo of B, right? What do you like with that?
Man, I think as any business owner, you kind of have to be that way. And I think that's smart, right? You got to have contingency plans. You don't want to all of a sudden be caught off guard and have no idea what to do next. Although you can plan out through double Z and then triple A is going to happen, right? Something that you never saw. So I think it's healthy to an extent, but I think the detached planning part is good, but it's when you start really becoming emotionally invested in, oh my gosh, is this going to happen or is that going to happen? One, it clouds your judgment, right? But 2, that's when you start getting all worked up inside. The cortisol is just flowing, the adrenaline's flowing, and you can't turn it off. And you've created all of these dire circumstances in your head in order to try to figure them out, but there's nothing to shut it off, right? And so I think that just is what leads to, lawyers particularly, I know lawyers, so many lawyers being wound up so tight is they're just constantly, I don't want to say in fear, but just constantly planning for this or that or this or that.
Yeah. With my kiddos. So after I had that conversation with Veronica, Cassidy came in and we started talking about like catastrophizing and the starting to tell yourself those stories. And it was really interesting to talk with them about human survival instincts. I said, look, you want to know why you're so obsessed about, is that spider going to leap on you? Because way back in the day, way back in the day, we had to focus on the bad things, because the bad things were not like, I lost $20. The bad things were like, I got bit by a snake and now I'm going to die. Right. It was the bad things were pretty catastrophic. There wasn't modern medicine. There wasn't just a general catalog of what things to avoid and risk. And I mean, we could probably go into a diatribe on how we're way too risk averse as a society. And maybe kids need to end up with like scraped up knees and bruised elbows. Like, that might be part of life. But talking with them about the survival instinct, I was like, yes, you're going to obsess about the bad things because your survival instinct is kicking in. You have to make an active choice to focus on the good. I'd be curious, like with your kids, at least for mine, one of them, I can't remember if it's Cassie or Veronica, but one of them made the statement of like, I think life, like there's a lot of bad stuff that goes on. Like, let's pause and really examine that. Is that reality or is that fear?
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're a big mindset family, right? And I think, one of the things that we do, I think pretty well here, and this has been over the last couple of years where we've been intentionally doing this, is we share with our kids when bad stuff happens, right? We don't protect them from it. If dad has a bad day at work or he's dealing with something really, really tough, or, physically, you and I trained for the marathon last year. There were plenty of bad, tough days there. And, I would share with my kids, like, hey, Dad, how was your run? When they see me come back just completely, miserable. And I'm like, it was tough. I was going to make it. But then they see, okay, Dad faces tough stuff. But you know what? Dad finished his run. Mm-hmm. You know what? Dad got up the next day and went to work. Dad had a really good day the next day. And so I think they see these things of, you know what? Life is tough. But how do you face that toughness? you get back up and you do it again. And they don't see me complain about it. They don't see me just, oh, woe is me. They see me deal with it. Yeah. You can't just say that bad things don't happen, because they do, but you deal with it, you process it, and I talk with my wife about it, and then we move on down the road. Right. And I think that's a healthy way to do that. And I think that's kind of the example that we try to put in front of our kids. And I think that really helps with the catastrophizing is, you know what? Yeah, bad things are going to happen, but I've seen how this plays out in my parents. And so it's not going to be a surprise when bad things happen to me, and I got to get through it.
So you get a lot of practice reps on that with your kids, with the immediate family. How can you bring that more into working with your team?
Well, we get plenty of reps there too, on a daily basis. It's unfortunately people don't always listen to what we say, and they disagree with what we say. So whether it's an adjuster taking a ridiculous position, a provider doing weird things or not giving us what we need, and we have deadlines coming up, or clients who are just not compliant or are doing things to screw up their cases. It's frustrating, and we get frustrated by those things, but it's like, okay, not the first time, not the last time this is going to happen. Is there a way to kind of game plan around this? Is there a way to almost expect this, kind of to your earlier point of thinking, okay, if game plan A doesn't work, what's B, and then what's C? Is there a way from the get-go to try to prevent this stuff? And we've put a lot of processes in place to prevent that, including, vetting our clients significantly before we ever sign them up, or potential clients. But really, using those to figure out, okay, yeah, this is frustrating. I don't want to have to deal with this, but is this preventable? Is this a gap in systems or processes? Or is this just one of those things that we're going to have to deal with occasionally, and that's just part of it? How do we deal with it best?
Then for the team, so they've got their plans. I mean, look, I know you've got an awesome, growing, really healthy, robust firm, but there are a lot of firms that may find themselves stuck at, say, the mid six figures, and they do a lot of the planning, not always executing on it. I know that you all execute a little bit more than the average bear. How do you keep the team executing and like, I don't know, what happens when it gets blocked up? How does that manifest itself?
Yeah. So, we're a traction firm. So we have metrics, we have KPIs, we have rocks. And so typically if, it's outside of something of your ordinary duty, then that's going to be a rock. But, just focusing on the day to day, we're constantly monitoring. So the biggest thing you can do is keep it on the radar. Right. And we have a meeting every week. We just had ours yesterday, and we go through the scorecard, and we're looking at metrics like, hey, do you have any overdue client calls? That's like super big one for us. No overdue client calls. How many overdue tasks do you have? We monitor that to make sure, okay, is this a capacity problem? Is this a, hey, pull your head out of the clouds problem? Or is this something else going on? Right. So we're constantly on top of that. And if you want a team that executes, then you got to monitor and make sure they're executing. You can't lose interest.
Turns out. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's really not that hard. If you're not executing and you're monitoring, then they either don't understand what they're doing, or you don't have the right people. And that's a leadership problem.
Yeah.
As I've heard many times, every problem is a leadership problem.
Yes.
And so for firms that aren't executing, I would guess, and that's how it's just been with me when we're not executing on something, the leaders lost interest in it, or they're not focusing on it and tracking it.
Well, that kind of wraps back around to like being present. I mean, as a firm owner, you've got a ton of different demands on you, a ton of different segments of the business that require your attention at some point or another. How do you manage rotating through those responsibilities?
Well, this is something you and I worked on, right? I kind of looked through and said, okay, what do I do that really drives things forward? Because that's where I need to be spending my time. I don't need to be spending my time, answering questions that someone else can answer in the firm that doesn't need my attention. I need to be looking. And so the things that we identified are, okay, marketing. Clearly, I need to be heavily involved in marketing. That's, something that I do that really pushes the firm forward. One of the other things I need to do is managing attorney, right? I need to work with the attorneys, make sure that all those metrics are being met, be there to answer questions for them, help with strategy, kind of those higher level aspects of running each case. And then the third one is learning and training, learning and teaching. And so we have every month we have lunch and learns with the entire team. The attorneys and I get together and we go through. I'm going through a book that I was talking about with you before the show, outlining it, coming up with different ideas, and then we implement those ideas. We also talk about what's working, what's not working, how we can improve our processes, those kinds of things. But learning is just as important. I can sit there and teach all day, but if I'm not learning myself, then I'm not keeping up to speed on everything. And so I started carving out time every morning to read or review notes, to think and come up with some maybe outside the box things that we can do. And then we have meetings. I do a Q&A every single day at 4:00 with the attorneys. So that kind of helps me manage my time so I'm not getting interrupted throughout the day. They score up all their questions. We get on a Zoom together so they can each hear each other's questions. I try to have the other answer the question if they can. And then we started recording those to kind of create a depository of knowledge, if you will. And then on the marketing front, I've carved out specific days for marketing. Obviously, I do the podcast, and then we have different marketing initiatives that I'm pretty strict in adhering to. Sometimes hearings and depositions and things like that come up, which screw up my schedule. But for the most part, that's how I've approached it, and that's really kind of a this year type thing. And I feel like it's really been working.
So you last year, kind of related to this, you had a major departure from the firm that thrust you back into that managing attorney space.
Right.
And I want to talk specifically about that because I know that there are a lot of firm owners who really want to be in that focused CEO seat. And there's a lot of talk about elevating out of legal, but you found yourself back in that space. How did you handle that shift from a lot of, say, future stuff to something that's a little bit more present overall?
Yeah, you have the adrenaline surge, right? Which lasts for a few weeks while you get your feet back underneath you. But here's the thing. I didn't view it as, this is something I really don't want to have to do again. I was like, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity to figure out where things can get better. How are we behind? How are we, do we have too many cases on these people? Do we not have enough cases on our attorneys? Do we have case managers who are doing a great job or do they need training? And so I really got to jump in, and quite frankly, I had fun because this is something I've been doing for 20 years. Right. And so it was awesome to be able to work with the various case managers, ask them, hey, why did we do this? It's like, oh, well, because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, well, what if we did it this way? And then to kind of watch their eyes go, oh, yeah. and I learned just as much from them and from the other attorneys too, especially which buttons to click and when. I got in trouble for that quite a bit. As well as leaving case notes on file of mine. I got several slacks on that. Like, hey, why don't you go ahead and put in that case note? Sorry about that. But, it's an opportunity to get back in there and keep your skills sharp, right? As well as interact with clients. I directly from my time spent with clients, as well as the book Unreasonable Hospitality, we were able to roll out a bunch of different things to really make the client experience that much better at our firm, which is super important to me. And so, I think if you're forced back into that, or if you're forced back into any role that maybe that's not exactly where you want to be, embrace it, because there's an opportunity to learn, as a CEO from jumping back into the weeds and doing those things.
So is there a plan for you, going forward to, again, elevate out of that position?
Well, so I'm not primary on any case. Well, that's not true. I'm primary on some cases, but right now, I'm happy with where I am. At some point moving forward, is there? Probably. But, there's a whole lot of things changing in Texas right now. And so I really do need to be on, in the weeds. So, is there a plan moving forward? Yeah. We're planners, right? But when will that plan start to be executed? I don't know. And that plan may be revised. I really enjoy what I'm doing right now. I love being able to interact with the lawyers and learn with them. And, the marketing front has always been fun. So yeah, I'm perfectly happy where I am right now.
Good. So on that marketing front, like what are some of the things right now you're having fun with it? What are some of the things that you're enjoying doing there?
I've always loved being able to be creative, coming up with different initiatives. We now have, we've
Lots of
hired a few more people.
dances, right?
Yes, TikTok dances, all that. Trying to engineer those. I don't even have a
You're
TikTok
trying
account.
to revive the ice bucket challenge. Like Scott's going old school. He's going to do Gangnam Style soon enough on
Yeah,
Facebook.
exactly. Hey, I love old school stuff, so let's bring it back.
Yeah.
No, so I think we've brought some more people on, which allows us to really move forward a bunch of different initiatives, which is really cool. And so I have a lot of fun with that. The the planning process, having the people who can set up all these different things. We just did our first community focus group, and that's been something in my mind ever since Stephen Goldstein brought up his pizza focus group. And so that's been really cool. We executed that last week on the first time. We have several more planned for this year. It went amazingly. It gave our attorneys an opportunity to get up on their feet and present, because we don't get to try a whole bunch of cases right now.
Right.
And so it gave them an opportunity to go practice on real people who, would be typical jurors in Collin County, where we are right now. And we learned a lot. We had a really good time. We made some great relationships while we were there. Halo Pizzeria, where we had it, is a fantastic partner with fantastic pizza too, by the way.
Careful. The Connecticut folks will have none of your, they have fantastic pizza. If it's not in New Haven, Ryan McKean can yell about it later.
Ryan can yell about it, but Ryan can also fly down here and try it before he no good. I'd be more than happy to buy him a slice down here.
There we go.
But yeah, being able to execute on those things is really fun, because you have all of these different ideas, and then you finally have the team around you to make it a reality, and it's really cool.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit like that focus group, because some people will hear that, and the nervous part about doing something like that is, what happens? Do I just buy people pizza and then we talk about cases? Were you all doing a presentation? What did it look like?
Yeah. So the way, one of the things that one of our core values here at Snellings Law is love for community, right? And so constantly I've been thinking, what's some sort of a community event that we could put together that people would enjoy, that wasn't just some, marketing ploy, but like a cool, unique experience. And, I've heard so many people say, oh, I would love to be a juror. I would love to be a juror. It's probably not what you would expect to hear. The part that people don't want to be a juror is the having to go to the courthouse, wait around all day, with the potential of, giving up a month of your life. Like, that's what people don't want to deal with. Hearing like real cases and getting to give your opinions and feedback on, people like that. And so I was like, okay, well, what if we created an event where it was laid back, right? It's 2 hours. A lot of focus groups are 4 to 6 hours. And, they can ask questions to us too for part of it. And so we did a sample of voir dire, and then we went through 2 different cases and asked them various questions on it. And, we asked people to rate it at the end of the night, and, pretty much everybody gave it a 10 out of 10. And we also asked them to give us some suggestions for what we could do better. So we're going to implement several of those things. A lot of it was tech stuff, like, hey, I couldn't see the TV when I was sitting over here.
Right.
Microphones weren't loud enough, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, we're super excited about that. And it was really, really fun. And several of them asked, like, hey, can we come to the next one and bring friends? Right. And so that to me is pretty cool, because that shows like, hey, this really is a community event when people are wanting to bring their friends, and it's fun. And so we were super excited about that.
So what I love about that, Scott, is I really believe that the law is way more interesting than most law firm owners and lawyers believe it is to the general public, despite the fact that some of the most popular books, most popular television shows, most popular movies often involve the law or lawyers directly in them. And that focus group experience really expresses an opportunity for someone to participate in sort of a pop culture way with it.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just sitting there thinking, as you were saying that, I think as lawyers and people involved in the law, a lot of what we do is horribly boring. right? There's a lot of just stuff that we got to do on a daily basis, and it sucks, quite frankly. And so we look at it and we're like, oh, nobody's going to be interested in this. But when you can go present a really cool case facts, or really complex case facts, or a real whodunit, for like a car crash, like who would you put responsibility on here? Here's a partial video of it. Here's what the crash report says, and here's what some different witnesses say. What else do you need to know to make a decision here? Right? Like, that's fun. It's like a puzzle. And for us as lawyers, it's fantastic, because I have yet to be at a focus group where I didn't hear something where I was like, whether it be a theme, whether it be, it never occurred to me to even think about that piece of evidence, or, wow, I didn't realize that was confusing. But now that I've heard them talk about it, that is confusing. And so the genius of focus groups is you essentially get to go try your case however many times you want to,
right?
Or figure out whatever issues, and figure out what the real people may actually say, without having to just go try it once in front of people and realize, I probably should have done this, that, and this other thing differently, due to the 0 verdicts they gave me.
I mean, I could imagine you could create like a whole content spin-off series that's just laying out some of the things that you all talk about at these focus groups, or even sharing in other spaces. Like, here's this one fact that everyone loved to examine. What's your first instinct when you hear this? Like, now I'm thinking, what's the community engagement campaign that we can spin up?
Yeah, hey, Charlie's marketing brain just got switched on.
I mean, because think about the number of podcasts that are Dateline style podcasts. There's someone has been murdered. Well, in this case, there's been a car accident. There's still a similar idea of, we're establishing a fact pattern. We're trying to figure out who's responsible for what, who's going to pay up, what are the final consequences. You just have a robust amount of intrigue in all of this. I mean, a deposition in and of itself could be the most interesting thing that gets published in someone's life over the course of a week, outside of maybe their favorite television show.
Yeah, especially if you're able to clip the deposition and take out all the really boring stuff. Like, where did you grow up? How many kids do you have? All that stuff. Yeah. No, I mean, my wife and daughter sit there and they watch something where somebody's putting on makeup. It's like a makeup tutorial while she's talking about true crime. And apparently it's super popular. I have no idea what the name is, but they watch it all the time.
And Amy has yet to convince you to do your version of that, where Scott's putting on makeup in the morning.
Exactly. We won't be seeing that anytime soon.
Everyone has a certain line they're not going to cross. We just found Scott's.
Yeah. Well, you found it earlier with the TikTok dances. Yeah, that's not going to be happening either.
That's true. Okay, so that's interesting, because it brings me to the idea of authenticity, which frankly is something that's been bouncing around in my head a lot recently. Playing with the idea of, is it authentic if we're trying to say it's authentic? And sometimes authenticity is not just what you put out there, but what you won't put out there. I'm curious for you, the sense of authenticity. What are some of the things that you look out that you want to put into the world? And what are some of the things that maybe you look at and go, yeah, that will never be me?
So for me, I actually think about this a lot, because for me to stand up in front of a jury and ask them to fine for my client and award money, I have to be credible, right? Well, how do you build credibility? Through authenticity. And so for me, one of the key pieces of authenticity is being vulnerable, right? Whether it's to a jury showing like, hey, this case has some bad facts. Like, I'm kind of worried here, but I think these can be explained. Here's how, right? Because there is no perfect case.
Right.
I've never seen a perfect case. And so I think when you acknowledge that this is not a perfect case, like, you guys have a job to do here. You guys have a real job. Or whether it's in any kind of relationship, whether it's through community marketing, whether it's through having coffee with somebody, whatever it is, you have to be vulnerable, right? I mean, I love telling my kidney story. Having a kidney transplant with my best friend being my donor, and how that changed my life. It was a tremendous asset to my faith. It really helped me re-examine what was important in my life, as well as reprioritize things.
Mm.
And so, I think when you're vulnerable, and trial lawyers are typically terrible with that, right? They wear their egos on their billboards, and they've never lost a case, and they all have multi-million-dollar verdicts and all that. But
Right.
I think when we open up and we're not scared to be human, then it encourages other people to do that as well as to connect, right? Because that's really what we're all looking for is connection. Like, I want to connect with a jury. The jury's going to do what the jury's going to do. I have no control over that. But at the end of the day, if they feel like I am credible and honest, and I certainly hope they do, because that's my attempt every single time we step into a courtroom, then I think we're going to be in a pretty good place. Same thing with convincing a potential new client that, hey, I think we're the right firm for you.
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge things that other firms do differently. And I acknowledge why I think our way of doing it is better in any kind of relationship. But it can go the other way. There's certain clients I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what, if this is what you're looking for, we're probably not the right firm for you, because that's not really what we focus on. If I'm working on developing a relationship with a community partner, I'm like, hey, what is it that we can do to help you? Right? Like, just like, if there was one thing I could do to help you, what would that be? Instead of just going in and trying to sell, whatever it is I'm trying to sell. And so I think being vulnerable is the very first step to authenticity.
There's something that I want, sort of a thread that I wanted to pull on and also bring and loop back around to the discussion of being present earlier. Because as you were talking about work that you do in trial, whether it's selecting the jury or any part in the actual trial itself, the thing I've always been fascinated with is the performer side of it, and not necessarily the gregarious side, but the 2-track mind that I find most performers have, which is when you are dealing with something live, like being in a courtroom, there's the element of being very present to hear exactly what is going on and to be focused on what is happening and absorbing all of it. While also at the same time having waves of new information come at you for which you must start calculating and contingency planning for the future. That I find that skill set very interesting. How does that manifest itself for you, like in the courtroom? How do you manage that mentally?
That's the hardest thing about being in trial, right?
Hmm.
Every single day when I come home from trial, I crash.
Yeah.
Because my brain is completely locked on for however many hours of trial. Plus, it's been locked on since that morning. Chris Finney does a great thing. He has a little Post-it note that he keeps on his counsel table in front of him. It's an acronym. I don't remember the exact acronym, but it's like, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Is essentially what the acronym's saying. So every time he sees that, he's like, am I paying attention to what's coming out of the witness's mouth right now? Am I paying attention to what the jury is looking at? Because as lawyers, yeah, absolutely, we'll hear some evidence, we'll see some evidence, or hear some testimony, and we're immediately like, okay, I need to fix that, or I got to do this, and then you're not paying attention to what's going on after that, right? Because you're planning out, oh, I got to do this on cross, or I got to do this on redirect, or whatever, and that's really, really tough. And so I think it always helps, one, having multiple people there, so it's not all on you, but developing that skill set of being able to listen, maybe write down a quick note, and then go back to it and remember like what it is that you need to do there, because you can't write out your whole redirect while they're talking, or you're going to miss 10 other things.
Yeah.
But it is really hard to do, because you have a couple of things going on, right? You're listening to what's going on. You're calculating, okay, what do I need to do to fix this or to jump on this or whatever. And you also got to be paying attention to what's going on with the jury. And you're also listening for objectionable testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a ton of things going on all at once. And the only way I know to get really good at it is experience. Like, you got to get in there and do it, because it's just not natural for most of us. It's certainly not natural for me.
No, that's really tough to deal with. I like how you layered on, it's not just 2 tracks. Those are your sort of 2 immediate tracks. Those are the percussion and the lead guitar, but we're layering in all these other tracks. Oh, okay, we've also got this low synthesizer over here, and here's the bass guitar over here. And they may not be the loudest things, but you have to have all of it blended together. and you're paying attention to literally every single element. And it's interesting how many attorneys, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, then in their, say, business lives and work lives, don't always turn that off, or at least don't bring it down to a single track. So kind of as a last bit of wisdom here, Scott, for you, bringing down to that single track mind, are there any exercises, any intentional devices that you use to help you bring it to single track?
I think awareness, right? I don't have like an exercise or anything. I have implemented breaks throughout my day where I'll go, leave my phone in my office and try to go. We have kind of a lush area outside of our office that is, surrounds a commercial building. So I just try to walk around that with no phone, no headphones, nothing, and just try to not think about work, relax, enjoy, looking out at nature. During the summer, that's really hard because it's 110 degrees here. But, I think an awareness of just continuing to remind yourself like, hey, slow down and be present. Slow down and be present. When you find yourself drifting off, it's kind of like meditation, right? When you find yourself starting to think about something else, just come back. You're not going to be perfect. I'm not perfect by any stretch. I probably got in trouble last night for zoning off during dinner. It was a really late day. But I think just keeping it top of mind, and if that's writing in your journal each morning, like, hey, what will make my day great today? Be present. And then as you look at it each time, like, oh, yep, I wasn't really present during that conversation. Okay. I'm going to be present during the next one. Hey, I have this meeting coming up. I have a podcast with Charley. I'm going to be fully present with Charley. I'm not going to be looking down at my planner, seeing what I have next as Charley talks about, marketing. Yeah. I'm going to be sitting here and really listening in and locked into Charley. And so for me, I think keeping it top of mind, building in some of those breaks is a huge starting point. Anyway, getting rid of the phone. Getting rid of the phone.
Oh, yes. Getting rid of the phone, even if it's just silent, turn it off all the way. You can grayscale you can set it up where like you press the home button 3 times and it grayscales it. There's all kinds of magic that you can perform.
Grayscale is amazing. It's absolutely awful to look at. And that has helped me tremendously. It like almost gives me a headache to look at.
What I found remarkable, Scott, is when I do the grayscale, even if I do it for a few seconds, when I turn it back on to full color, it's so jarring to me. It's so vibrant that immediately there's a part of my brain that activates and I go, oh, I see why this device is so wicked, because immediately the neurons are going batshit for me.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't believe it, go try it. You're going to see just how addicting a phone can be with full color on. With grayscale, it's not nearly so. It's really hard to look at, quite frankly.
Yeah. So Scott, before I ask you the final triple question, if people want to connect with you, learn more about you, et cetera, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can absolutely find me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I'm the most active. It's Scott Snellings. And then on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, we're Snellings Injury Law.
All right, Scott, final question for you. You know what it is. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
So I am reading Damages Evolving by David Ball. I'm also reading Your God is Too Small. I just finished Renovation of the Heart. Also reading The Body Keeps the Score, which is a psychology major who loved neuroscience. It's amazing. Yeah. I'm looking at the bookshelf in my background right now. I'm not reading any of those. I think I've already read those.
Those are fancy.
I usually have like 5-6 books going at once.
Yeah.
I just finished The Wager, which is a historical novel about a shipwreck back in England in the way back. What was the other part of it? What am
watching and listening to?
Watching hockey, where my Dallas Stars, they're not performing very well in the Western Conference Finals, but my little guy Jacob and I, we love to watch hockey together, and wife's a huge Dallas Stars fan too. So been watching a lot of hockey recently. And then what am I listening to? I am all over the place on podcasts. I do the Bible recap every day. I listen to that. And then, well, not every day. I do play catch up quite a bit. And I'm listening to Influence, the book Influence.
Oh, Cialdini, a great one.
I listen to Huberman. I listen to Tim Ferriss. I just kind of pick and choose whichever ones sound interesting.
Nice. Very good. Scott, always a joy to talk with you, my friend. I appreciate your time, energy, insight, and wisdom today.
All right. Thanks, man. I always appreciate being on with you.
And we will see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.
Or maybe we'll keep going.
Yeah, I might have to just press the leave button. Hold on. I'm going to refresh the page. We'll see what's about to happen.
Uh-oh. See, 99% uploading. Hey, Sarah, can you bring me my phone?
You done with the podcast?
Yeah, I think so. We're still on.